We've been covering Daniel Prude for a long time on this channel. I brought him up multiple times in multiple stories. We covered his case at length. This was the story back in Rochester, New York, which we were sort of revisiting because very recently there was a new case out of Rochester, New York, where a 9-year-old girl was pepper sprayed because she was getting into it with police. I mean, the police literally pepper sprayed a 9-year-old girl who was in handcuffs after being covered in snow while her butt was already in the back of a police car. They didn't like that she was having a mental emergency because she just thought that her mom stabbed her father. The whole thing was bad, and they still pepper sprayed her while she was in handcuffs. Here you go. Rochester police. We remembered them because we covered the same Rochester police, not the same officers, but the same department long time ago, last year in the situation of Daniel Prude. Daniel Prude was another individual who should not have been killed by the police. He was having a mental health emergency. No question about it. This guy was naked. He was high on drugs, probably. I haven't confirmed that. Probably. Or he was having a mental breakdown. Who knows? But he was naked, not a threat to the police. They did not like what he was saying. They thought the whole thing was a joke. It was one of the most horrendous body camera videos that we've gone through here. And we've covered a lot of them. It was really bad because of the amount of inhumanity that we saw from these cops towards a man who was not a threat to them, who was clearly hurting, in pain, confused, just totally out of sorts. And they killed him, in my opinion. They killed him. That's not a question. Whether it's murder or not, we're going to dig into that right now. We saw this earlier today, posted by Meg O'Connor. She's a great follow on Twitter if you're interested in criminal justice. She said in 5 minutes, the New York Attorney General Letisha James, set to make an announcement regarding the conclusion of the investigation into the Rochester police killing of Daniel Prude. And so you may remember this scene. Really bad scene. We have, I think 6 or 7 cops were all around him, and they put him in a spit sock. Okay, so he started spitting, not necessarily at them. And when we did our frame by frame here on this channel, we followed the spit. It wasn't in the direction of the officers at all. We followed a speck on the camera from the body cameras that he was like spitting gum out a different direction. So they said, oh, he's spitting. So they put a spit sock on him. So it was one of the most, ridiculous things that I've ever seen. And I thought that they clearly murdered this guy, but New York Attorney General Letisha James says no. She said a grand jury today had voted not to indict any police officer on charges relating to the death of Daniel Prude. My office concluded there was sufficient evidence surrounding the death to present a case to the grand jury. We presented the most comprehensive case possible, but the grand jury came back and no dice there. Didn't work out for him. So does this sort of ring a bell for anybody? We did the same thing, had the same process when we were covering Breonna Taylor. Same story. Cops were involved. Somebody was killed. Evidence is presented to the grand jury. Grand jury comes back. Nope. We investigated the cops. Nothing there. No evidence. No charges. Back then we were saying, well, wait a minute. What evidence did you present? Daniel Cameron, the attorney general out of, on the Breonna Taylor case, said we presented all the evidence. We presented everything. And then grand jurors came out and said, no, you didn't. You didn't tell us that we could charge that officer. You didn't tell us that we had alternative options. You didn't present that. You didn't say that, because Daniel Cameron went out in the media and was, bloviating around on the news and saying, well, we did everything. And they, the grand jury, fair and impartial. And they decided that John Mattingly, our officer, didn't do anything wrong. And they saw that, the grand jurors, and came back out and they said, no, that's not true at all. That's not how it went. So you'll have to excuse my skepticism here that Miss Letisha James really did present all of the evidence that she is claiming. But let's go through some of this. So this is her statement. She says here, and remember, the Attorney General is the chief law enforcement officer of the state, right? They typically, in this case, she is responsible for prosecuting this case, is what it sounds like. So let's go through what her statement is. Before I do, remember this. Remember how he died? If you're not familiar with this case, he was in handcuffs with a spit sock on his head, sitting naked on the ground. And when he started to stand up, put his foot under his butt and stand up a little bit, they laid on him. 3 different cops laid on him. And there was one cop in particular. I'm not going to play the image or play the video here, but he was doing a plank on his neck, literally on his neck, for minutes. And then he later died as a result of asphyxiation from the onsetting of physical trauma. I think that's what the autopsy said specifically. So the cop caused his death, even according to the medical report. But what they say here is that this is a policy thing, right? This is, well, he was kind of following policy, and so we got to excuse him for that kill. There's nothing we can do about that because he is sort of within the confines of what the rules say. Here is Letisha James. She says, while I know the Prude family, the Rochester community, and communities across the country will be rightfully devastated, we have to respect this decision. The current laws on deadly force have created a system that utterly failed Mr. Prude. So what is she blaming? The current laws on deadly force. They've created a system that have utterly failed Mr. Prude and so many others before him. I get so tired of these statements from these people. Daniel Prude was in the throes of a mental health crisis. What he needed was compassion, care, and help from trained professionals. Serious reform is needed in the Rochester Police Department and other criminal justice system as a whole. I will be pursuing a multifaceted approach, including legislation, to address the very issues that have prevented us from holding officers accountable when they improperly use deadly force. I will be unshakable in my efforts to bring change that is so desperately needed. Okay, Letisha, we'll see. We have Attorney General James. She releases a statement. This is her more full statement. New York Attorney General Letisha James announced today that a grand jury voted not to indict any police officer. None. In the course of the investigation, they concluded that there was sufficient evidence surrounding the death warrant to warrant the presiding case to a grand jury. In an effort to provide maximum transparency into the case, Attorney General James is proactively releasing a comprehensive report detailing the events. We're going to go through this here at the end, but let's go through this statement first. Daniel Prude was in the throes of a mental health crisis. What he needed was compassion and care. We concluded all of that. The current laws. This is exactly what she posted on Twitter, so we don't need to read that again. While the grand jury voted not to indict any officers, serious concerns remain. She issued a number of recommendations to the Rochester police. So nice recommendations. Okay, recommendations. Great. To address these concerns, most notably related to its handling of mental health crises. Recommendations. Number one, law enforcement officers, emergency communication providers, dispatchers, and emergency medical service personnel must be trained. So we got training again to recognize the symptoms of excited delirium syndrome and to respond to it as a serious medical emergency. They're saying he was experiencing a mental health trauma. It was excited delirium, often associated with the intake of drugs, can be characterized by irrational behavior. Responding officers knew that he was experiencing a mental health crisis, yet they ultimately restrained him because they were unfamiliar with how to handle this type of medical emergency. Okay, so I have so many problems with this. I mean, I can't even begin to understand how it's just not. I hate to say common sense, but why would an officer? Why would they do that if they knew? In other words, why is the default that you kill people? Why is the default not, hey, this guy's maybe experiencing a mental health crisis. Maybe there's something we should do about this. Why is it that they just go, all right, well, our training and procedures say that we need to do a physical plank on this guy's neck for 2 minutes. Is that part of the policy? Did they get training to do that? Were they born that way? If they were born that way and they thought that that was okay, then why are they on the force in the first place? If they weren't born that way and that was trained, then why are you training them that way? Okay, so we're going to have some training. We're going to have some training adjustments. All right, good. Since Executive Order 147 took effect, the Attorney General Office has repeatedly observed cases throughout the state with similar factual characteristics, excited delirium. It is imperative that all police officers and emergency medical technicians be trained to recognize the symptoms and trained to respond to this serious medical emergency. Okay, so more training. Good, great. All communities should assess models for responding to crisis situations that minimize or eliminate police responses to mental health calls whenever possible. Passing Daniel's Law would greatly aid in this endeavor. They should create and implement models for responding to crisis situations. They recently released its policing reform proposal in response to Executive Order 203, which includes a person in crisis team pilot that would constitute law enforcement alternative responses. The model it presently constructed in Mr. Prude's case would have been outside the purview of the PIC's response. Instead, Attorney General James recommends that the city consider a tiered approach in situations where a person is in an emotional distress that takes account any potential safety concerns. The passage of Daniel's Law, named in honor of Daniel Prude, would make significant changes to the mental health response landscape. The law would establish mental health response units. All right. Okay, so yet again, nothing that's going to address any of those officers who killed that guy. So New York should mandate de-escalation training, so more training. They should adopt a body-worn camera release policy regarding critical incidents. Okay, law enforcement agencies should explore the use of a spit sock alternative. So I just get so tired of this stuff. So it's not about an officer who thinks it's okay to wrap your hands around somebody's neck and lean with your entire body weight on their body for I think we calculated it's like 2 minutes. You could hear his body collapsing in on itself. 3 officers on him, one guy putting his entire force on his neck. You could hear him verbally gurgling. You could hear things collapsing in his head. It was horrendous. But we're going to have new training. We're going to have new spit sock alternatives. That's great. And we're going to have body cameras now. That's great. So we have no discussion of culture. We have no discussion of accountability. No charges. Just gone with the wind. Nothing happens as a result of that. It's just shameful stuff. All right, so let me see if I can pull up this report here. I don't know why this link is not working. All right, so over on this screen, I apologize for that. We're going to see if I can pull up Letisha James' report over here. Looks like I have it. And this is a funny report. This is why you know that most of this is just ridiculous nonsense. So this report that she pulls out is when you take a close look at it, here's what it looks like. It's the Special Investigations and Prosecutions Unit, and it's the report on the investigation into the death of Daniel Prude. All right, so this sounds like we might get some juicy stuff out of here. Look at this thing. 204 pages. Wow, that is a long document. They must have done a very thorough analysis on this, okay? Well, the problem is when we get to about, let's see here. So it's 204 pages. When we get to page, 52, that's kind of the end of the document. What is the other 3/4 of the document? What is it? Well, it's all exhibits. All right, so we've got executive orders, Exhibit 2. We've got some findings, Exhibit 3. And then look at this. For the rest of the document, research experience. And it just keeps going and going. We've got more citations. Somebody's just copy and pasting. Just a bunch of garbage in here. Nothing that is even relevant. Oh, look, we've got a citation here in, what is this, Polish? Okay, good. So Baxter 2011, that's good. Glad we got that. We're on page 73 now, by the way. So we still got another 130 pages to go. So we just keep going. Any useful information here? No. We just have legal ombudsman. Ombudsman. We've got determinants of prisoners' decisions to seek legal aid. So more more copy and pasting. We've got some selected contributions over here from the Atlanta Police Department that was published in 2020, 2014 report. And it just keeps going on and on and on. Oh, look, we have a table here. So we know that this person has some editorial experience from 2015 all the way back to 1971. Great. Nobody cares. Moving on. Keep going down. We're at page 100 now. And we're just scrolling. I'm just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Oh, look, we got another exhibit, Exhibit 4. Anything good in here? Nope. It's another resume, more timelines. It just goes on and on. For basically 3/4 of the document is this. Now I'm grabbing the scroll bar and we're just scrolling down. Publications. Got it. Just a resume dump for 150 pages of the 200-page document. Zero information in it. And so it looks good. Looks like she prepared a big, nice, thick report. Probably looks good in a binder that she's delivering on the governor's desk or whatever. But really not much in here. Sort of a conclusion. Let's see if we can find the conclusion. Here we see some pictures here. Broken glass, Daniel Prude, ambulance. So there is good information in here. But here's what you see. Here is the plank on the neck, right? So here it is, 3:22:01 a.m. This officer right here, and it looks like what they're saying is his foot moved from 3:22:01 a.m. to 3:22:11 a.m. And it looks like he goes from a full plank onto sort of a half plank right here. You good, man? He removed his hands from his head. He said, you good, man? P.O. said, oh, he's puking, just straight water. See all that water came out of his mouth? I didn't see it, but I see it now. He moved Mr. Prude's head. He said, my man. Mr. Prude's back appeared to move at 3:31 and again at 3:23. It's difficult to determine from watching the footage whether the movements were actually some form of movement by Prude or whether they caused him to move. Yeah, and so he was basically dead at that point. Didn't even look like he had chest compressions, the whole thing. Horrendous. Anyways, the point is 200 pages of documents, about 50 pages in there that is relevant. The other 150 pages is just, it's nothing, right? It's nothing. And this also doesn't have the full autopsy report either, and that's interesting. Summary of the final findings of the autopsy is attached. The full autopsy report is not included. Additionally, the OAG communicated with the medical examiner in order to assure a proper understanding. What is related below has been taken exclusively from the final autopsy report, did not refer or utilize any grand jury testimony in using this. So he had fendicycline, so I think that's PHP. And this was this is what he died for. Complications of asphyxia in setting of the physical restraint. So it was the body plank. Now I don't remember when we covered this, we basically were calculating that I think it was like 90 seconds. There was an old video of this that we went through, but he was doing a full body plank on this guy's neck for longer than 9 seconds or 10 seconds. Okay. That's not how he died, because he did it for 10 seconds. It was a long period of time, and you could hear him gurgling. You could hear his windpipe collapsing. You can hear him literally just being crushed under the weight of that officer and other officers, and no charges for that. So apparently more training is going to help root out the malfeasance in that officer's heart. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do about it, but I'm not holding my breath on any of that stuff. Sharon Quidney says, what? You mean the cops who killed Prude are going to get off? Yep, no charges. 0 charges at all. We have Ma Fox says, why is the default use of force when clearly they're not a threat to the public or anyone in general? They're handcuffed on the ground, clearly experiencing some form of trauma. Well, Ma, according to Letisha James, it's because they didn't get enough training. They didn't know any better. The only thing they know how to do is just, I don't know, beat the hell out of people and kill them. I don't know. He was in handcuffs. He had a cover over his head. And he's dead now because of what the police did. Pinky says, no training should ever lean on a person's neck. We are people and life is precious. Yes, we are. We are. Ma Fox says passive resistance does not warrant restraint via excessive physical force. You're right on that, Ma. You are absolutely right. Want to Know says prosecutors know how to get a guilty from a grand jury. They do. Well, that's part of where this conversation comes in, is what was presented to them. What did they show? Daniel Cameron told us that they saw everything about Breonna Taylor. We know that was a total lie. And he's caught in it. And he's not going to pay any repercussions for it because he gave the party the outcome that they wanted. Remember, all of these law enforcement officials are basically beholden to the big police unions. There's this whole big law enforcement entity. Just like we talk about big tech and big media and big government and big military, the military industrial complex, there's a big law enforcement entity there. And they all circle up to protect themselves. Daniel Cameron had to present evidence to a grand jury to incriminate a fellow law enforcement officer. So what evidence was presented to the grand jury? Basically nothing. So that they had no option but to conclude that there wasn't enough here to support charging those officers. My question is, did the same thing happen here? It took us about a month before those grand jurors came out on the Breonna Taylor case, but they did. And it all came to light. Now, Letisha James saw what Daniel Cameron did, and she's trying to beef this up a little bit, right? Oh, I got this huge report that just came out. Well, it's 200 pages, yes. It's a big, fat, thick binder, yes. But 3/4 of it are irrelevant. What did they present to the grand jury? And did the grand jury watch the same video that we watched here? Because if they did, it's pretty clear that what they did, in my opinion, was in sort of law, they call it an indifference to human life. Depraved heart murder, sort of a cold indifference to life. That's exactly what that was. That's going back into common law, but pretty disgusting stuff. Prude was obviously in need of medical care, mental health issues, and they suffocated him. Then they get off. Well, I'm in favor of changes in policy, but these cops need to be held accountable, according to Sharon Quidney. I think you're right. They're not going to, though. They'll be right back on the force. They'll take some time off. They'll let all this smooth over. They'll be literally back out there doing the same damn thing. May not even get a little mark on their record, right? Because they're found not responsible for this stuff. Osak says, what's a supervening indictment in Arizona? I have 10 of them. Do I need a lawyer? Also, does it bypass any of a person's rights. So it's just a different form of an indictment. If you have 10 of them, yeah, you need an attorney. Does it bypass any of a person's rights? Then, well, no. I mean, it goes through the same formal process, but an indictment is still obtained by a grand jury proceeding. And so when you're talking about supervening, it's just sort of where it's coming into play. So if you're going to trial on a certain set of charges and you have a supervening indictment that's saying, no, we're going to add these new charges before you move in and move forward with this additional case. So it still follows the same procedure. It's not sort of it's not anything that would water down your rights. Now, if you want to have a separate conversation about whether your rights are already being watered down through a grand jury proceeding, then you can have that conversation. But no, it's nothing special that I think would cause you to raise a flag and say, well, maybe this is some sort of trampling of a constitutional guarantee. We have Joe Snow says, replying to Seji, if training led to it, then it is the duty of the police to change that training. If someone was mistrained, it is not their fault if there was not competing proper training. Thus, the reason qualified immunity is necessary for those officials, for those acting in an official capacity aggrieved. It serves a purpose, but it is widely abused. Yeah, I mean, the cops just get away with anything. And it's very frustrating to me. Thank you, Joe Snow. It is widely abused, which is why I have so many problems with it. And then our last question of the day comes over from Nadarb Lasser. Says, just an idea, but maybe something needs to be passed that requires every police precinct to hire an on-hand psychiatrist counselor that, one, work with officers on a daily basis and does regular mental checkups for them. Two, when a call like this comes along, that counselor rides with another officer to respond to the call. I think each department should have at least one available depending on the size of the department. Not a bad idea, Nadarb. I think that there is a lot of room for that. I think that there's no reason. I mean, literally, there's no reason. If you watch that full Daniel Prude video, there's no reason why he should be dead. None. Other than the cops acted just totally indifferent to his life, and they just didn't. I mean, I just don't think that they cared about him. He was in handcuffs, and he had a spit sock on his head. He was literally harmless. He tried to stand up. They tackled him, crushed his neck. He's dead. They could have handled that a million different ways. They didn't. They're going to be protected by qualified immunity. I would like to know what Letisha James presented to the grand jurors. Did they talk about qualified immunity? Did they say that? Did they go out there and present evidence of the police policy and say, well, he kind of fits within this policy, and there's also this thing called qualified immunity, and if you believe all that to be true, and you also believe that he was within the policy, then you have to find that there's no probable cause here to support criminal charges. And the grand jury goes, okay, well, if those are the rules, we got to play by the rules. Or was something else presented? Did they play that full video? Did they see that? Did they present any evidence from... I don't know, folks. This stuff gets me so hot because it's very reprehensible behavior that we as a society can do stuff to solve, and we're not. We get people like Letisha James and Daniel Cameron who will just tread the water of the same old sameness. It just keeps going and going and going, and we always hear more training and more resources and more body cameras and more of this and more of that. And we're deeply sorry for the families every time. And the people who are in charge don't do anything about it. She's the attorney general of the state. She comes out, hey, hey, Rochester Police, excuse me. Here's 5 recommendations that you guys can do to make sure maybe this doesn't happen again. Oh, by the way, I have a 200-page report. Here you go. It's a nice thick binder. Well, my job here is done. Daniel Prude's dead. Those cops are right back on the street. No justice whatsoever. And these are the people who are supposed to be the purveyors of justice. These are the people who are supposed to be protecting society to make sure that nobody does any harm to anybody in this country. And here we have officers who just kill people back on the streets. Isn't that nice? Whew. All right, my friends. Well, that was it for today. I want to thank those of you who support the show. Keep this energy going. I want to thank all of you for joining us on locals.com. Here is just a small sample of the people who have been over there supporting us. We've got CLRO. We've got Hane202. We got Scuba Babe. Big thanks to Faith. Big thanks to Ma Fox. We've got Cax Axe, Rolf77, Paula MK. We've got The Mariner. We've got Lana12. We have Dilius in the house. Jeremy Matrita in the house. Saw a lot of him today. We have J Proper. in the house. We've also got Bum Lick It, Gust Click. We got Willie's Driver. And then we have some new people who signed up. We've got Ruler Law. That sounds a little bit close to home. Ruler Law. We also have KT_Sherlock. Welcome, KD. We have TOS Forever, Terms of Service for Life. We got new Ms. J. Good to have you, new Ms. J. We got Carl in the house. Look at that. Very simple name. I like that. And then we have Aunt Deb, who joined up. They're all supporting us over on this website, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And so if you've noticed, all of those questions that we've been taking are coming from Locals. That's where people will ask their questions. And if you do that over there and you support the show, you go to the front of the queue. You get your question answered. Miss Faith is clipping those, and we will go through them. So thank you to everybody who has helped us build this little bit of a separate platform. I'm actually excited about where it's going to go. I'm trying to think about how I can add more value over on that platform. And so I'm working through a couple different things on my end, but I want to thank you sincerely for helping us build a little bit of an alternative community over on Locals. So go and check that out. If you haven't been over there, there's some good stuff over there. You can get a copy of my book for free. It's called Beginning to Winning. There's a PDF download, so you can just go and grab that. All the slides are going to be over there as well from our lovely Miss Faith. Get a copy of the impeachment template if you want it. The existence systems is something that is, I think, going to be pretty interesting, where I'm actually going to have a conversation with a friend of mine tomorrow about that on Clubhouse. So we're going to try to start doing some more Clubhouse stuff. If you're not on Clubhouse, I apologize. I think it's a pretty cool app. If you wanted to get on it, if you're an Android person, for example, I'm an Android person, but I went and got an iPad. Now I know not everybody can afford that and can do that, but if you have an old iPhone, or you can go buy an old iPhone for $50, $100, it's a pretty cool app, especially if you like to talk, and especially if you're somebody who wants to sort of debate and get into the arena of ideas. It's very easy to use, and you can get a simple iPhone, a new iPhone, a new iPod Touch even, I think would cover you. It's $199 from Apple, but we're going to start playing around with that a little bit more. So tomorrow at 2 p.m. Arizona time, I'm going to be talking with a friend of mine who runs a sober living company here in Arizona. We're going to talk about sobriety and systems, and in particular the existence system. So that's going to be taking place at 2 p.m. tomorrow on Clubhouse. You can check out the existence systems, and he actually is using a very similar structure to this. He actually might be using this structure. We're going to ask him about it a little bit. His name is Tim. Also on Locals, links in conversation, and great people as well. So a lot of awesome reasons to go over and join us there on locals.com/watchingthewatchers. Thank you for supporting us there. And lastly, but not leastly, I am a criminal defense attorney. So if you know anybody in the state of Arizona who has been charged with a crime, things like DUIs, drug offenses, domestic violence, traffic violations, major felonies, minor felonies, anytime anybody's in trouble with the law, we can help. We provide free case evaluations. We love to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases and in their futures. And we can help people with virtually anything. So if it's an open case, a closed case, if you have an old warrant out that you need to get cleaned up, if you want to restore your rights, if you want to remove a mugshot off the internet, we can help with all those things. It's a free case evaluation, literally nothing to lose. Come on into our office. We can schedule it over Zoom, schedule it over the phone, whatever we can do to accommodate, we're happy to do so. And we'll make sure that if you send anybody our way, they leave better than we found them or than they found us, because we're very passionate about what we do, and we're not too bad at it. We're pretty good at it. So that's it for me, my friends. I want to thank you for joining us today. We're going to be back here, same time, same place tomorrow, 5 p.m. Arizona time, which is Mountain Standard. We also have 4 p.m. in California, Pacific time. We've got 6 p.m. Central time in Texas, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. I want to thank everybody. Welcome the new supporters over on locals.com. Thank all of you for continuing to join us on this show. Have a great night. Sleep well. Have a nice dinner if you haven't already eaten, and we'll be back here tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.